Genesis isn't just the first book of the Bible. It's the foundation for everything that comes after. At its heart, Genesis has a clear, intentional structure that shapes how we understand its message. The book is divided into two major sections. The first part, chapters 1 through 11, takes the widest possible view, telling the story of God and the entire world. It's epic and universal, covering creation, the first humans, and the chain reaction of their decisions. These chapters dig into where humanity comes from, what we're meant for. And then, starting in chapter 12, the story suddenly zooms in. The focus shifts from all people everywhere to just one man, Abraham, and his family. Chapters 12 through 50 follow the lives of Abraham, his kids, and grandkids, setting up the rest of the story of Israel. This isn't by accident. Genesis uses this dramatic change. With this structure, Genesis invites us to see both God's care for all creation and his personal investment in individual lives. The journey of hope, healing, and restoration starts right here in the blueprint of Genesis. Genesis kicks off with a scene of pure potential, a universe filled with darkness and chaos, just waiting for something to happen. Then God speaks, and everything changes. With each word, and right at the center of all this, God creates humans. The Hebrew word Adam literally just means humanity. But what makes people different is that they're made in God's image. That's not just some cool title, it's a job description. Being made in God's image means we're supposed to reflect his character, creativity, justice, compassion out into the world. People are chosen to be God's representatives. God gives the first humans a garden, a place bursting with possibility. Their mission is to work it and take care of it, unlocking potential, bringing out more beauty, and making sure life flourishes. From the very start, God's blessing is right at the heart of the human story. He wants people to enjoy life, build families, and partner with him in making. Right in the middle of the garden, God doesn't just offer beauty and abundance. He gives humanity a serious choice. Out of all the trees, two are special: the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Up until this point, this moment is at the heart of what it means to be human. God invites people to trust his sense of right and wrong, to believe he knows best. But he never forces anyone. Instead, he gives them space to go their own way. That's the tension Genesis sets up. Free will is an amazing gift, but it comes with real risk. And it's not just a story about the first humans, it's about all of us. Every day, we face choices. Will we trust something bigger or just do our own thing? Genesis shows us that from the very start, what we do with freedom has shaped. Everything shifts in Genesis when a mysterious character, a snake, shows up in the garden. The snake is described as clever and sneaky, a symbol of rebellion against God. It questions what God has said, planting seeds of doubt in the humans' minds. Did God really say that? Twisting the truth, the snake makes the forbidden fruit sound appealing, like it's the real irony. Humans were already created in God's image. But the temptation is too strong. Hoping for more, the humans go for it. They eat the fruit. In that moment, the perfect harmony they had is lost. The very first, God responds with both justice and grace. He tells the snake that even though it looks like the snake won, it's only temporary. One day, someone will come, a descendant of the woman, who will crush the snake's head, though he'll be wounded in the process. This is the first glimpse of hope, a promise of a wounded. After the fall, Genesis shows just how fast things go downhill. One bad choice in the garden turns into a chain reaction that affects everyone. The next big story is about two brothers, Cain and Abel. Cain gets eaten up by jealousy, and even though God tries to warn him, Cain gives in to anger and ends up killing his own brother. It's the world's first murder, and it's trying to move on. Cain builds a city, but instead of a place of hope, it becomes a place where violence and pride are the new normal. Things only get worse with Lamech, one of Cain's descendants, who actually brags about how violent and vengeful he is, treating people like possessions. The brokenness just keeps spreading. Families fall apart, trust is shattered, and pain grows deeper. Then, Genesis tells a strange story about the sons of God and the Nephilim, powerful figures who just take whatever they want, pushing things further into chaos. Instead of caring for the world like God intended, people fill it with corruption and selfishness. They're building kingdoms for themselves, and the whole world feels out of control. God sees it all, and it breaks his heart. Humanity has drifted far from him and from each other. The world is no longer a place of blessing, but of conflict and suffering. But even as things look hopeless, the story of Genesis reminds us that God hasn't given up on people yet. As brokenness and violence spread everywhere, Genesis takes a dramatic turn. God sees how far humanity has fallen, and it truly breaks his heart. He decides to step in, not just out of anger, but out of a deep desire to protect the goodness he originally created. The world has gotten so corrupt, but this isn't just a story about wiping everything out. At its core, it's about mercy and a second chance. God chooses Noah, a man who stands out because he walks with God and tries to do what's right. Even when the flood finally ends, God makes a promise. He blesses Noah, just like he did Adam, and gives him the job of stepping back into the world to help creation thrive again. It's a new beginning, a sign that God isn't done with people yet. But Genesis is honest. Even with this clean slate, the real problem, human nature, still lingers. Noah and his family aren't perfect, and the old struggles will return. Still, God's promise and hope for something better remain at the center of the story. Even after the flood, humanity falls back into old habits. As people spread out, they eventually gather together and decide to take on a huge project, a city with a giant tower that's supposed to reach all the way up to heaven. But this isn't just about building something cool. At the heart of it, they want to make a name for themselves, to show how great they are without God's help. On the surface, the Tower of Babel looks like an incredible feat of teamwork and technology. But really, it's about human pride and trying to go it alone. God sees what's going on and knows it's only going to lead to more division and brokenness. So, instead of wiping everyone out, he simply confuses their language. Suddenly, nobody can understand each other. The big building project falls apart. And when you step back and look at all these stories, Genesis 1 to 11 gives us a clear, honest picture of the human experience. The world was meant to be good and beautiful, but now it's filled with brokenness, pain, and conflict. Time after time, people get the chance to trust God and do things his way, but they usually go their own way instead, trying to decide for themselves what's right and wrong. That choice leads to broken. But even with all this chaos, Genesis never leaves us without hope. In every story of failure, there's always a spark of something better. From the start, God makes a promise that brokenness won't get the last word. There's a mysterious hope, a descendant, a wounded victor, who will eventually defeat evil at its root. This promise runs like a thread through every messy story, pointing at Genesis makes it clear. God hasn't given up on the world he made. Even when people mess up, he responds with justice, but also with mercy and new opportunities. The real hero here isn't people trying harder. It's God's never-ending determination to bless and restore creation. The big question, Genesis 1 to 11, ends with the world at a crossroads. We've seen humanity's choices lead to conflict, pain, and distance from God. But we've also seen God's endless patience and determination to stick with His creation. The big question still hangs in the air. What is God going to do about all this brokenness? The answer starts to unfold right at the close of this section. Instead of giving up or wiping the slate clean again, God kicks off something brand new. He chooses one man and his family as the starting point for hope. It's like God is saying, I'm going to bring blessing back to the world, but I'll do it step by step. The rest of Genesis, and honestly, the whole Bible flows out of this. Genesis 1 to 11 isn't just old stories. It's the setup for everything that comes next, both in Scripture and in the story of humanity. The questions it raises are still relevant. Where does hope come from? What does real restoration look like? Genesis shows us that even when things look hopeless, God is always working on something bigger. The stage is set, and the journey of faith and rescue is just getting started.